When people talk about Alexander, they always say the same thing: ruthless, heartless, untouchable. A fortress of a man. But no one ever told me that trying to scale his walls would destroy everything I thought I was. I was 22, fresh out of college with a degree in one hand and desperation in the other. His company, Alexander Holdings, was my dream. A skyscraper of glass and ambition that pierced the city sky. I still remember the first day I walked into his office for my internship interview. The air was cold, sterile, smelling of expensive aftershave and power. He didn't even look up from his laptop when he said, his voice a low, vibrating command that froze me in my tracks. "You're late." My hands trembled as I placed my resume on the vast, empty expanse of his desk. I got stuck in the elevator. I stammered, the lie tasting weak on my tongue. He finally looked up, and those sharp, glacial blue eyes cut right through me, seeing every insecurity, every fear. "Excuses are weaknesses. Don't bring them here again." That was Alexander, the alpha CEO who built an empire from nothing. Everyone feared him. I just wanted to survive him. But life, it seemed, had other, far more complicated plans. Weeks turned into months. I worked harder than I ever had before. Late nights bled into early mornings. Missed meals were replaced by endless cups of coffee. I was a ghost in the machine, but somehow he started to notice the ghost. It was in the little things. The way his gaze would linger for a half-second too long when I brought him his afternoon reports. The rare, almost imperceptible quirk of his lips when he once caught me nervously straightening his tie before a major board meeting. I told myself it meant nothing, that I was just reading into the professional silence of a powerful man. But my traitorous heart didn't believe a word of it. Then, one stormy night, everything changed. The office was empty, save for the two of us. Rain lashed against the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting the city lights in watery streaks. I was gathering files from his assistant's desk when his voice, uncharacteristically quiet, cut through the quiet hum of the servers. "You're different, Liam." I froze, a stack of papers clutched to my chest like a shield. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird in a cage. "Different how, Mr. Alexander?" He stood from his chair, a predator uncoiling from its rest. He stepped closer, into my space, close enough that I could feel the warmth of his body, smell the subtle, clean scent of his cologne. The air crackled. "You don't flatter. You don't simper. You just work." With a quiet fire I haven't seen in anyone. His voice dropped to a whisper. "It's infuriating and intoxicating." His hand came up, his fingers brushing a stray lock of hair from my forehead. The touch was electric, a jolt that went straight to my soul. All my defenses, all my rationalizations, crumbled to dust in that single moment. And that's when the careful distance between CEO and intern, between Xander and Liam, completely shattered. It was a collision of pent-up desire and unspoken tension. His lips found mine in a kiss that was anything but gentle. It was a claim, a conquest. My back met the cool glass of the window as the storm raged outside, mirroring the one he was stirring inside me. Clothes were discarded in a frantic, desperate rush. His whispered words were not of affection, but of raw, undeniable need. And God help me, I gave in completely. I let myself be consumed by the fire that was Alexander. Later, as we lay tangled in the dim light of his office, the reality of what we'd done began to dawn. I turned to him, my heart feeling too full, too hopeful. But before I could speak, he did. His voice was already returning to its familiar, cool tone. "This was a mistake," he said, not looking at me. "A moment of weakness. Can't happen again. And no one can ever know. Do you understand, Liam?" The words were like a physical blow, each one landing with a sickening finality. The heat of the moment had vanished, leaving only the cold, hard ashes of regret. I just nodded, my throat too tight to speak, and gathered my clothes, my shattered dignity the only thing I took with me. The weeks that followed were a blur of silent agony. He was all business, the distant, untouchable CEO, as if that night had been nothing but a dream that had left a very real, growing secret inside me. When the doctor confirmed I was pregnant, yes, me, my world didn't just shatter, it evaporated. How do you tell a man who told you that it was a one-time thing, a mistake, a secret that he's going to be a father? I rehearsed the words 100 times in my head, but every scenario ended with that cold, blue gaze freezing the confession on my lips. Fear won, not just of his rejection but of his ownership. So one quiet morning, I wrote a simple resignation letter. I waited until he was out of the office at a meeting, placed the envelope in the center of his impossibly clean desk, and disappeared. I changed my number, moved to a different part of the city, and began the terrifying, beautiful journey of becoming a father on my own. 5 years later, life was different now. It was louder, messier, and filled with a love so profound it sometimes stole my breath. My son, Leo, with his mop of dark hair and startlingly familiar blue eyes, was my entire world. We were in a toy store, a chaotic paradise of color and noise. Leo was mesmerized by a display of miniature, die-cast cars. "Look, Daddy, the red one," he squealed, pointing with a chubby finger. I smiled, rummaging in my wallet. "I see it, Angel. Let me just see if I have enough." I looked down for only a second, my focus on a handful of crumpled bills. When I glanced up, the space in front of the toy cars was empty. "Leo," my heart gave a single, hard thump. The store was a maze of aisles and bright colors. "Leo," I called again, my voice pitching higher with panic. I took a frantic step forward, my head swiveling, and then I saw him. He was running toward me, his little legs pumping, a beaming smile on his face. The tight knot of fear in my chest loosened, replaced by a wave of relief so strong it made my knees weak. "I'm here, Daddy," he announced, skidding to a stop in front of me. He thrust a small, red, die-cast car into my line of sight. "Look, the nice man bought it for me." The relief vanished, instantly frozen by an inexplicable, icy shiver that shot down my spine. My eyes darted from the toy to my son's excited face, then past him to the tall, impeccably dressed man standing a few feet away, his back to us. "Leo," I said, my voice tight. I knelt, taking his shoulders. "What man? You can't take things from strangers." "But he was nice," Leo insisted, his bottom lip trembling slightly. "He said I had good taste." My blood ran cold. The phrasing was so specific, so him. I looked back at the man, the set of his shoulders, the cut of his expensive coat. It was all a hauntingly familiar silhouette against the bright, childish backdrop of the store. My protective instincts warred with a deep, societal need to be polite, to thank someone for an act of kindness toward my child, even as every fiber of my being screamed to run. "Okay," I said softly, standing and taking Leo's hand. My grip was probably too tight. Let's go say thank you. And then we need to go." We walked the few steps. Each one felt like walking the plank. My mouth was dry. "Excuse me, sir?" I said, forcing a polite, parental tone that felt like a lie on my tongue. "Thank you for the toy. That was very generous. I hope my son wasn't any trouble." The man turned. Time stopped. The air left my lungs. It was him, Xander Alexander's face, which had been softened by a rare, gentle moment, underwent a seismic shift. The shock was raw, unguarded, and utterly devastating. His eyes, those piercing blue eyes, widened. They flickered from my face, down to Leo, who was now hiding slightly behind my legs, then back to me. "Liam," he breathed, my name a ghost on his lips. He looked shattered. The ruthless, untouchable Xander Alexander was staring at my son, at our son, and the fortress walls around him were crumbling right before my eyes. He knelt down slowly, his movements stiff, his gaze locked on Leo. What's your name?" he asked, his voice thick with an emotion I'd never heard from him before. "Leo," my boy said shyly. Xander's jaw tightened. He looked back up at me, a storm of confusion, hurt, and dawning realization in his eyes. Leo, he repeated softly. Then, his voice barely a whisper, he asked the question that had been 5 years in the making. He's 5, isn't he? I could only nod. My own eyes filling with tears I could no longer hold back. The secret was out. The past was here, standing in a brightly lit toy store, and it was looking at us with the eyes of our future. And in that moment, I knew nothing would ever be the same again. The air in the toy store, once filled with the cheerful cacophony of childhood, became thick and silent, a vacuum around the three of us. Xander remained kneeling, his tall frame folded awkwardly on the linoleum floor, his gaze a physical weight on our son. 5, he repeated, the word a hollow whisper. The math was undeniable, a simple equation that dismantled his entire reality. Leo, sensing the tension, pressed himself harder against my leg. Xander's eyes, dark with a storm of emotions, lifted to meet mine. Is he my son? The question wasn't gentle. It was a low, guttural demand, stripped of all pretense. Panic, cold and sharp, seized me. My instinct to protect Leo, to protect the life I had built, screamed at me to lie. No, I choked out, the word tasting like ash. He's not yours. A dangerous calm settled over Xander's features. It was the same calm I'd seen him use right before he dismantled a rival company. He rose to his full height, looming over us, and the kind man who'd bought the toy was completely gone, replaced by the ruthless CEO. Look at me, Liam, he commanded, his voice dropping to a venomous whisper so Leo couldn't hear. Look at his eyes. They're my mother's eyes. He has my father's name. Do not insult my intelligence. He took a step closer, his presence overwhelming. I will ask you one more time. Is he my son? When I didn't answer, my silence a terrified admission, he delivered the ultimatum. If you lie to me now and I have a DNA test done that proves he is mine, he said, each word precise and icy, I will use every resource at my disposal to ensure you never see him again. I will bury you in legal battles until you have nothing left. So, I suggest you tell me the truth. Right now. The threat was real. I knew he meant every word. He had the power, the money, and the cold-heartedness to do it. My lie had been a flimsy shield against a nuclear weapon. The fight drained out of me, leaving only a weary, defeated truth. Tears streamed down my face as I looked from his hardened expression to Leo's frightened one. I wrapped a protective arm around my son and met Xander's gaze, my voice breaking. Yes, I whispered, the truth finally, painfully, set free. He's yours. The single word, yes, hung in the air between us, a confession that changed everything. For a long moment, Xander didn't move. He just stared at me, his expression unreadable, as if he was processing the truth on a level deeper than thought. The fury in his eyes didn't vanish, but it was joined by something else, something raw and staggering. He looked from my tear-streaked face down to Leo, who was now quietly crying, overwhelmed by the intense emotions of the adults. The sound of our son's soft whimpers seemed to snap Xander out of his trance. The ruthless CEO facade cracked, revealing a flicker of something entirely new. Panic. He's crying, Xander stated, his voice uncharacteristically unsure. He looked at me, almost helplessly. What do I do? The question was so absurd, so utterly divorced from the man who had just threatened to destroy me, that a hysterical laugh almost bubbled out of me. Instead, I swallowed hard and knelt, pulling Leo into a tight hug. Shoo! It's okay, my angel. It's okay, I murmured into his hair, rocking him gently. Daddy's here. Everything is okay. I shot Xander a look that was pure fire. You're scaring him. He had the decency to look chastised. He took a deliberate step back, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair, leaving it disheveled. He watched us, a foreigner in his own life, witnessing an intimacy he had never been part of. Leo's cries slowly subsided into hiccups against my shoulder. The store manager was now looking our way with clear concern. We were causing a scene. "We can't do this here," I said, my voice low and firm. Xander nodded, his businesslike composure returning, though it was now layered with a palpable tension. "My driver is outside. My penthouse. We will finish this discussion there." It wasn't a request. It was a statement. A new battle line had been drawn. "No," I said, holding Leo tighter. "Not your penthouse. Public place. Cafe. Or we go nowhere." His jaw tightened, but he conceded with a sharp nod. "There's a quiet place next door. We'll go there." He looked at Leo, who was peeking at him from the safety of my neck. Xander's voice softened by a fraction. A conscious effort. "Would you like some ice cream, Leo?" Leo, ever a child, sniffled and nodded slowly. The magic word had worked. "Good," Xander said, and without another word, he turned and led the way out of the toy store, a king leading a procession he never knew he had. I followed, my legs feeling like lead. I had just admitted to the most powerful and dangerous man I knew that he had a son. And I was now walking directly into the lion's den, with our precious cub in my arms. The cozy, upscale cafe was indeed quiet. Xander secured a secluded booth in the back. He sat opposite us, a king holding court. Leo, now distracted by a massive sundae, was content. Xander steepled his fingers, his gaze fixed on me. The initial shock and threat had passed, replaced by a cold, calculating intensity. "Start from the beginning, Liam," he commanded, his voice low. "You found out you were pregnant, and your first and only thought was to run." "It wasn't my first thought," I hissed, keeping my voice down for Leo's sake. "My first thought was terror. My second was you. I remembered every word you said to me that night. A mistake. A moment of weakness. No one can ever know. You made it abundantly clear what you thought of what happened between us. What was I supposed to think you'd feel about a baby?" "I had a right to know," he bit out, his control slipping. "And I had a right to protect my child from being seen as a mistake." I fired back. How could I raise a son knowing his father saw his very existence as a weakness? I did what I thought was best for him. I have spent every single day of the last 5 years putting him first. Xander flinched as if I'd struck him. He looked at Leo, who was meticulously eating sprinkles one by one, completely oblivious to the war being waged over his life. "He's healthy?" Xander asked, the question awkward, as if he was navigating a language he didn't speak. "He's perfect," I said, my voice thick with defiant pride. "He looks like you," Xander observed quietly. "But the eyes." "I know," I whispered. We sat in silence for a moment, the only sound the clink of Leo's spoon. "What happens now, Xander?" I finally asked, the question hanging between us like a verdict. "You have the truth. What do you want?" He leaned back, his blue eyes, so like our son's, boring into me. He was no longer the shocked father in a toy store. He was Xander Alexander, and he was assessing his new assets. "Everything," he said simply, his voice low and absolute. "I missed 5 years. I will not miss another day. You took my choice away once, Liam. You will not do it again." He leaned forward, his gaze unwavering. "From this moment on, he is an Alexander. And you?" He paused, his eyes sweeping over me with a possessive intensity that stole my breath. "You are the man who gave me my heir. We are going to my penthouse now, and we are going to discuss the terms of our new arrangement." The word arrangement hung in the air, cold and transactional. It was a word from his world, not mine. It spoke of contracts, negotiations, and leverage. My heart, which had been a frantic bird, now felt like a stone in my chest. "An arrangement?" I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. "What does that even mean? You can't just decree our lives." "Can't I?" he countered, his voice dangerously soft. He glanced at Leo, then back at me, the threat from the toy store implicit in his gaze. "I think we've already established that I can. You have 2 choices, Liam. You can come with me willingly, and we can discuss this like civilized adults. Or I can make this profoundly difficult for you. The outcome will be the same. I will be in my son's life. The only variable is how much control you have left when the dust settles. He was backing me into a corner, and he knew it. My mind raced, searching for an escape that didn't exist. He had all the power, the money, the lawyers, the ruthless will. All I had was my love for Leo, and right now that felt like a weak defense against a siege engine. Fine. I bit out, the word tasting like surrender. We'll go to your penthouse. But this isn't over. A ghost of a smile, cold and triumphant, touched his lips. I wouldn't expect it to be. The car ride was silent. Oppressively so. Leo, exhausted from the emotional whirlwind, fell asleep in his car seat, his head lolling to the side. Xander sat across from us, his gaze fixed out the window, but I could feel the intensity of his focus like a physical weight. He was planning, calculating. His penthouse was exactly what I expected. A stunning, sterile monument to success. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased a breathtaking panorama of the city, but the interior was all cool grays, sharp angles, and expensive, uncomfortable-looking art. It was beautiful and utterly soulless. Xander dismissed the driver and shrugged off his coat, tossing it over a pristine white sofa. He moved to the kitchen, a vast expanse of marble and steel, and poured 2 glasses of water, his movements efficient and controlled. "Sit," he said, nodding toward the sofa. I gently laid a sleeping Leo on the large, plush rug, placing his beloved red car beside him. I sat on the edge of the sofa, back straight, every muscle coiled. Xander handed me a glass and took the chair opposite, mirroring our positions in the cafe. He studied me for a long moment, as if I were a complex business proposal he was considering. "The arrangement is this," he began, no preamble. "You and Leo will move in here. Immediately." My breath hitched. "What? No, that's not. It is non-negotiable," he stated, cutting me off. "He is my son. He will live in my home. He will have the security, the education, the life that is his birthright. You are his primary caregiver. Therefore, you will be here too." The sheer audacity of it left me speechless. He was unilaterally erasing the life I had built for us. "You can't just install us in your penthouse like new furniture." "I can and I am," he replied, his tone chillingly matter-of-fact. "This is not a punishment, Liam. It is a necessity. I will not be a weekend father. I will not have my son growing up in some cramped apartment across town while I live here. He will know his father. He will know this life. And what am I in this arrangement?" I asked, my voice trembling with a mixture of fury and devastation. "The live-in nanny?" His eyes darkened, and he leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "You are his father. That fact is immutable. But you are also the man who kept him from me for 5 years. So no, you are not the nanny. You are a necessary part of the package." He let the words sink in, their cruelty deliberate. "We will present a united front to him, to the world. You will have everything you need, a generous allowance, your own space in this penthouse, the best of everything. In return, you will not obstruct my relationship with my son. You will not speak ill of me to him. You will be here." It was a gilded cage, a beautiful, luxurious prison. He was claiming his son, and I was part of the deal, a troublesome asset he had to acquire to get what he truly wanted. "And what about us?" I whispered, the question slipping out before I could stop it. I wasn't even sure what I was asking. The us that had one night 5 years ago? The us that was now just 2 strangers bound by a child? Xander's gaze didn't waver. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the same conflict that had been in his eyes the night everything began, the intoxicating fire warring with cold control. "That," he said, his voice low and final, "is not part of the arrangement." He stood up, ending the discussion. He walked over to where Leo slept and looked down at him, his expression once again unguarded, filled with a bewildered, overwhelming wonder. The message was clear. This was about Leo. I was a condition of the deal. And the man I had once fallen for, the man who had whispered that I was intoxicating, was locked away behind a wall of duty, resentment, and cold, hard business sense. Our new life had begun, and I had no idea who I was in it. The first week in the penthouse was a cold war fought in whispers over a child's head. Xander was true to his word. A designer came to turn a spare room into a fantasy bedroom for Leo. A top-tier pediatrician made a house call. There were more toys than a store, but the greatest gift, Xander's time, was given hesitantly, awkwardly. He'd watch Leo play with the concentration of a man defusing a bomb, unsure of where to step in. I was the translator, the bridge. He's asking you to make the dinosaur roar, Xander. And Xander would, his commanding boardroom voice attempting a T-Rex roar, making Leo collapse in a fit of giggles. I was living in a gilded cage, playing the part of the necessary package. We were polite, distant. He'd leave a blank check on the kitchen counter. I'd tear it up. He'd buy me expensive clothes. I'd live in my old sweaters. I wouldn't be bought. Not again. The breaking point came on a Saturday morning. Leo was building a precarious castle with blocks, Xander and I on opposite sides of the rug, the space between us a frozen tundra. "Look, Daddy. Papa. A castle." Leo beamed, using the name he'd spontaneously decided for Xander. We both forced smiles. "It's wonderful, Angel," I said. "It needs a taller tower," Xander said, leaning forward to place a block. His hand brushed mine. A jolt like the one from 5 years ago shot up my arm. Our eyes met, and for a fleeting second, the wall came down. I saw the same bewildered man from the toy store, the one who felt that hollow space in his life. I flinched back first. That night, after putting Leo to bed, I found Xander standing by the massive windows, a glass of amber whiskey in his hand, staring at the city he owned but seemed so disconnected from. "This isn't working," I said, my voice quiet but firm. He didn't turn. "The arrangement is being fulfilled. Leo is happy. He's safe. He is. But he's not stupid. He feels the ice between us. He thinks we don't like each other." I hugged myself, the chill from the windows seeping into my bones. "I can't do this, Xander. I can't live like a ghost in my own life, in my son's life. I'd rather take him and fight you in every court in the country than let him grow up in this emotional wasteland." That made him turn. His face was etched with a fatigue no amount of money could fix. "What would you have me do, Liam? You want me to pretend? To play house? I want you to stop treating me like the enemy." The words burst out of me, fueled by 5 years of fear and loneliness. "I made a choice out of fear, yes, a fear you planted in me. But everything I did for him, just like you're trying to do now in your own cold corporate way. Can't you see that?" He was silent, his jaw working. He looked from me to the closed door of Leo's room and back to me. The fortress was crumbling. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted, his voice raw, stripped bare of all its power. It was the most honest thing he'd ever said to me. "The only way I know how to secure something is to acquire it, to control it." I saw him, and all I could think was that I could not lose him. And that meant I had to control you, too. "Love isn't a hostile takeover, Xander," I whispered, taking a tentative step closer. "And a family isn't a business arrangement." He looked at me, truly looked at me, not as the intern he'd seduced, or the obstacle in his path, but as Liam, the man who loved his son, the man who had haunted him for 5 years. "I know," he breathed. "That night. It was the one time in my life I let go of control, and it terrified me, so I pushed you away. I called it a weakness." He shook his head, a world of regret in the gesture. "It wasn't a weakness, Liam. It was the only real thing I'd felt in a decade. The space between us vanished. I don't know who moved first, but suddenly I was in his arms, and his lips were on mine. This kiss was nothing like the first. It wasn't a conquest. It was an apology, a surrender, a homecoming. It was gentle, searching, and filled with all the words we hadn't been able to say. When we finally broke apart, foreheads resting together, His arms held me like I was something precious, not something he owned. "I'm sorry," he whispered against my skin. "I'm so sorry, Liam. I'm sorry too," I whispered back, "for not trusting you enough to tell you." "We start over," he said, his voice firm with a new kind of resolve. "Not an arrangement. Partnership. Please, teach me how to do this. Teach me how to be a father. How to be yours." Tears of relief finally streamed down my face. This was the man I had seen glimpses of, the man worth falling for,